Hey guys, this is Wojtek from Jolly Monster Studio, and today we're going to look at importing new animations into Unreal, as well as retargeting them to work with our Unreal mannequin. So let's get into it. Now, before we begin our retargeting exercise, first we need to get some new animations to work with. For folks like myself who are not animation experts, there's a whole lot of resources out there in the wild where you can get new animations. In this case, I'm just going to look at Mixamo. For the folks who are not familiar with Mixamo, it's an Adobe-funded resource center for 3D models, animations, as well as a handful of tools that allow you to retarget things, modify the animation speeds, things like that. Now, this is sort of a basic retargeting technique, so the animations, it doesn't matter where they come from, as long as you just have something to work with. So in this case, we're going to download this dancing animation. It looks pretty entertaining. And we'll get it downloaded, extracted, and put into a folder somewhere for us to interact with in a minute. Okay, now that we have our animation downloaded and available, we are going to pop open our Unreal editor. We are going to create a new folder somewhere within our content pane, and we are going to drag all of our our downloaded and extracted resources into that folder. As part of the import process, Unreal will prompt you for a number of settings you can apply to the data that you're trying to import. So in this case, we have the option of modifying our transformation, whether or not we want to include the animations, whether or not we want to exclude the skeleton mesh, for example, to align it to a pre-existing skeleton, all kinds of settings. But for this case, you just want to make sure that your import animations checkbox is turned on. And then we're just going to say import all. And this will take a second. You'll also notice during the import process that the dialog makes mention of various animation tracks and how they relate to the bones of that particular skeleton that it's attached to. And that's going to become important later on when we do our retargeting. Now that our assets are imported into Unreal, you'll notice there's a couple of weird little things that we're seeing with the Mixamo model. And I'm not sure why this happens, but some of the materials when they're imported by default are set to blend mode of translucent. So what you have to do there is pop open the material, go to your material details pane, and under blend mode, change it from translucent to opaque. It'll take a second just to recompile that material, and then you'll notice our ball in the top left-hand corner looks a little bit more solid now. We'll save that. And then when we get back into our Mixamo folder, you'll notice that the character is now a little bit more visible. Further to that, when we drag our dancing animation into the level, you'll notice, once we play it, that very quickly she starts doing her little breakdancing moves. Cool. So if we were to use this character for our animations, that would have been great. She's already set up and doing her thing there in the corner. But that's not what we want to do. We want to get this little guy here doing those same moves. Maybe a little dance-off. We'll see. Now, the next thing we want to do is drag in one of our third-person blueprint mannequins into the level so we can start applying those animations to him, just so we can see how things are looking. So to do that, all we're going to do is go to our third-person CPP folder, blueprints, third-person character model, and just pop that into the level. We are also going to change its animation mode from using an animation blueprint class to just using an animation asset. Now, you'll notice that we're not seeing our dance animation here, and that is because this skeleton, this character model, has no reference to our newly imported character, and this is where the retargeting of the bones is going to happen. To begin the retargeting exercise, we want to pop open our mannequin skeleton. So if we go to our mannequin character mesh folder, we'll notice we have our skeleton for our Unreal mannequin. And when we pop that guy open, you'll notice on the left-hand side, we have all of the various bones defined. Their position within the mannequin itself, their turn angles, all that good stuff. Because we need to retarget these guys to our matching newly imported character, so let's just pull that one up real quick, and let's look at its dancing skeleton. You'll notice, side by side, the positions are just a little bit different. Let me just pull them up here for quick visualization. You'll notice the Unreal Mannequin has arms that are facing downwards at about a 45-degree angle, but our imported character has their arms at about a more 90-degree angle, so a little bit straighter in relation to the body. Now, you also notice that their elbow position and their hand positions are a little bit more turned inwards on the mannequin, or the Unreal Mannequin, whereas it's a little bit straightened out on the imported Mixamo character. So those are some of the things we are going to have to adjust before we begin the retargeting exercise. To realign the pose of our Unreal Mannequin, on the skeleton tree pane, we are going to select its upper arm left bone, and we're going to rotate it at about a 45-degree angle so it looks a little bit closer to our Mixamo model. Now, if you're not familiar with changing the move or rotate or scale intervals in the top right-hand corner, you can make these value changes, and I'm going to just pick to the 5-degree interval, and we are going to rotate the arm upwards by about 45 degrees. Then we're going to do the exact same thing to the other side of the arm, the upper arm right, by rotating it upwards by 45 degrees. Now, we're also going to just realign the elbow position a little bit. So, same principle on the lower arm bone. We are just going to rotate that out, but maybe 15 degrees, and do the exact same thing on the other side with the left-hand arm. And there's 15 degrees. So this guy now looks just a little bit closer to our Mixamo definition. And if we go to our Retargeting Manager pane, we have these options for modifying and viewing poses. So we want to kind of retain this pose definition for later use. So if you go to Modify Pose, you can say Use Current Pose. And then when we flip between Hide Pose and View Pose, you'll notice his arms move up and down. Now, the reason it's important to have the same poses between the two characters you're trying to reference animations from is because of the way the Unreal Engine works and how it expects you to have these things set up due to the importing process. So let me just show you what I mean by that. Let's go back to our Retargeting Manager and just reset our pose back to the original. Okay, there's our original pose. And now if we go back to our animation, the new dancing one, and if we right click and say Retarget Anim Assets, and then Duplicate Anim Asset and Retarget, you'll notice this view pops up. And this is where you will do the majority of your retargeting. You end up picking your target based on the source animation, and you'll notice the two are not lined up the same. There's a little bit of a warning message that says, hey, make sure your base poses are identical or as close to identical as possible, otherwise the retargeting of animations may not work correctly. So let's just go back and clean up that step, and I'll show you what happens when we retarget. So just go back in here to our upper arm, raise that back up to 45 degrees, lower arm, flip it back out by 15, and let's just rinse and repeat. Okay, let's just make sure this pose is available. And we're good. So if we go ahead and now try to retarget our animations, you'll notice that when we select our Unreal skeleton, the base poses are roughly the same. T format, things should be much better now when we run it. So we hit retarget, This will take a few seconds to complete, and we now have a new version of the animation that is representative of our Unreal model, or our Unreal mannequin. But if we now pop this into our level, you'll notice that it's not going to behave quite exactly as we want. So let's just turf our player here. Oh, actually, we don't need to reset it. I already set him up. And let's just now select our dancing animation. You see it becomes available because it's now tied to this particular skeleton. But it doesn't look quite right. You may see, or he may need to go see a physiotherapist. Let's see here what it looks like. And he's kind of wobbling. He's kind of trying to dance, but it just doesn't look correct. You see the motions are in sync. Everything is technically on time, but he's not manipulating his hands, his legs, his head correctly. So this is now where the bone retargeting becomes important, as we will align the positions of the bones on our Unreal mannequin towards the positions of the bones within the animation. So now to figure out how this problem can be resolved, let's take a look at our source skeleton, the one that the animations were attached to. So let's pop open our dancing skeleton. And on the skeleton tree, you'll notice that very similar to an Unreal mannequin, we have a whole pile of different bone definitions, but they have slightly different naming conventions. So you'll notice hips, root, pelvis, spine, and left shoulder, upper arm left. So they don't necessarily align, which is why our animation is all wonky. The way you correct this is we pull up our source skeleton, we go to the retargeting manager, and you'll notice that on the left-hand pane, all of our targets are set to none. So this is basically telling Unreal that when I retarget any animations, nothing will be aligned. But we can quickly go in here and do that remapping exercise. So just to show you how this starts impacting the animation as you correctly align the bones, let's just flip a couple of these guys and see what it looks like when we re-import our animation. So I'm just going to pick a couple of these guys. So we'll do the hips to the pelvis, spine to spine, spine 1, spine 2, spine 2 to spine 3. Let's do the neck because that one's good, and let's do the head as well, which seems to have been auto-picked up. Sometimes if the names are the same, the engine will try to autocomplete things for you, and that's really good. Now we'll go through the rest of these guys as part of this exercise. I will also have the details of the two maps between the Mixamo character names and the Unreal names, so you'll have them for reference on my blog, and you can quickly pull them up. And the other thing to notice is, besides these rig definitions for some of these, hand, lower arm, upper arm, etc. items, we also have the advanced section, which contains all of your finger bones, the twisting of your forearms, of your calves, of your thighs, as well as the various inverse kinematics points of attachment. Again, these rigs are going to vary depending on the type of character you're working with, so just bear that in mind. But let's go back to our base definition. Let's realign some of these guys. Let's save our dancing skeleton. We'll go back to our animation, and we will retarget it. So there's our retargeting. We now have an updated animation. So let's kill this guy. And yep, let's delete all the references. We don't care. Go back to our third-person mannequin, and let's reselect our new animation set. Now, if we play, you'll notice, hey, it's starting to look a little bit better. Someone's been taking dance lessons. So I'm just going to go ahead and update all of the other bone mappings, and I'll show you the finished product. Now I've gone ahead and updated all of the various bone mappings, both on the basic definitions as well as the advanced section. So all of the various finger bones are set up, and parts of the foot. Now, because you're going to be doing these animation remappings probably more than once, you may want to retain these rigs so you can just reuse them in the future. So to do that, with your rig selected, you go to the Save section, decide where you want to put this new rig definition, and I'm just going to pop in a new entry called Mixamo rig. So now that we have that in place, let's take a look at our final animation as it's mapped to the Unreal mannequin. So similar to our steps before, we're just going to retarget the animations, rerun that process. I'll take a second. Here's our new animation, and then we are just going to assign it back to our blueprint of our model. And let's take a look. So here we are. Here's our fully remapped Unreal mannequin model doing his dance. A mirror copy of our Mixamo imported entry. And we're almost there. I'm sure you can see this one little oddity where the feet of the Unreal mannequin are a little bit above the floor. And the reason for that is the positioning of the animations within the Mixamo structure is not in the same sort of transform space as our Unreal mannequin. So remember when I was saying that you have the option of remapping various settings when you're importing these Mixamo models or any other sort of animations and models. So we're just going to quickly go back, re-import our character, and lower the foot placement by, we'll try 15 points and see how that pans out. So to do that, we are going to go back to our Mixamo character. We are going to, in this case, I'm going to create just another folder so it's a little bit more organized. Mixamo 2, and we will drag in our dancing FXP file, and right on here, oh sorry, -20, not -15. So I've already put in this value previously when I was just double checking that everything was working. So yeah, what this is going to do is on the Z-axis, it's going to bring in our animation and lower it a little bit closer to the floor. So let's take a look what that looks like. Okay, so we have our animation re-imported with a slightly lowered position for our character. And I forgot to mention earlier, but the way I kind of figure those things out when I'm bringing in my animations is if I pop open my target blueprint for my third-person character, and I go to the definition of the mesh, I simply drop it down by, whatever I deem may be reasonable within my level, compile it, save it, and then just retry it, and you can see the character is now much lower to the ground. Now, obviously, we don't want to do that in our blueprint model because the capsule and all of our sort of player definitions are also going to change. As you can see, in this case, my character is standing on the floor, so we don't want that. We want to do it at the import process. So let's just fix up our blueprint, bring it back up by 20 points, compile, save that, and then let's go back to our new animation that we just brought in. And you'll notice I'm not going to fix the opacity, or sorry, the blending mode on the animation. We'll leave her a little bit ghostly. So there she is, and if we play that, you'll notice now her feet are a little bit within the ground. But all of our animations are still working, all good. So with this guy here, you'll notice when we look at the secondary model we brought in, again, our skeleton is the same, but if we pick our humanoid rig again, nothing is available. We have to remap all the bones. This is where having those rigs available to you becomes really handy. So here's our Mixamo rig, which we saved. We're just going to reload it. All of our remapping happens automatically. And then we can simply export this new animation, attach it to our mannequin, retarget. And now we have this other animation for our character. So if we replace our original one with our net new one, and we replay everything, you'll notice now he is much closer to the ground. Things are looking way cleaner. And everyone's having a great old dance time. So that's it. This is how you can go about importing various animation sets, Mixamo or non-Mixamo, into the Unreal framework and remap it against whichever sort of skeleton you may be working with. In this case, it's the mannequin. In other cases, you may have, some sort of giant monster. But yeah, that's pretty much it. You now have a fully sort of remapped set of animations, and you can do whatever you want with them. Please check out the source code on GitHub, check out the details about the bow mapping on my blog, and thank you for tuning in. Hope to see you next time.